The outdoor cafe on Fifth Avenue gleamed with afternoon sunlight, its white umbrellas casting elegant shadows over tables where New York's elite gathered for leisurely lunches. James Hartwell sat at one such table, reviewing contracts on his tablet while his 5-year-old daughter, Sophie, picked at a plate of pasta primavera that cost more than some people spent on groceries for a week. At 38, James had built Hartwell Industries from a small tech startup into a billion-dollar enterprise. He'd sacrificed relationships, sleep, and countless personal moments to reach the pinnacle of success. His marriage had been one of those sacrifices. His wife had left 3 years ago, unable to compete with his obsession with work, taking nothing in the divorce except her freedom. Sophie, thankfully, had stayed with James, though he often wondered if that was really best for her, given how much time he spent at the office. Today was supposed to be different. It was Saturday, and James had actually cleared his schedule to spend the afternoon with Sophie. Lunch at her favorite cafe, then perhaps the park or a museum. Quality time, the parenting books called it, though James suspected he was failing at it given how often. He checked his phone for messages from the office. "Daddy, look," Sophie said suddenly, tugging on his sleeve. "Not now, sweetheart. Daddy's reading something important," James replied automatically, not looking up from an acquisition proposal that couldn't possibly wait until Monday. "But Daddy—" "Sophie, please. Give me 2 more minutes." His daughter fell silent, but James could feel her attention focused on something beyond their table. When he finally looked up, irritated by the distraction, he followed her gaze to see what had captured her interest. Sitting on the sidewalk about 20 feet from their table was a young woman, probably in her mid-20s, wearing a tattered beige dress that had clearly seen better days, much better days. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a messy bun, and her bare feet were dirty from the street. Before her sat a small tin cup with a few coins and a hand-lettered cardboard sign that read, "Homeless, hungry, anything helps." God bless. James felt the familiar discomfort that always arose when confronted with visible poverty. He preferred his charity at a distance. Tax-deductible donations to reputable organizations. Fundraising galas, where he could write large checks and feel virtuous without actually encountering the people he was supposedly helping. "Daddy, she looks hungry," Sophie said, her voice small but determined. "Can I share my food with her?" "Sophie, that's not appropriate," James said quietly, glancing around to see if any of the other patrons had noticed his daughter's interest in the homeless woman. You can't just approach strangers like that. But you always say we should help people who need help," Sophie pointed out with the brutal logic of childhood. "She needs help. She's sitting on the ground, and she doesn't have any food. And we have so much food I can't even finish it all." James looked at his daughter's plate. She'd eaten perhaps a third of the generous portion, and James knew from experience she wouldn't eat much more. The meal had cost $35. Sophie was right. They did have more than enough. "It's complicated," James said. The inadequate explanation adults always offered children when they didn't want to admit uncomfortable truths. There are organizations that help homeless people. Shelters, food banks. She should go to one of those." "Why doesn't she?" Sophie asked. "I don't know, Sophie. Maybe she doesn't know about them. Maybe they're full. Maybe she has reasons." "Then we should help her," Sophie said with the simple certainty of a child who hadn't yet learned to look away from suffering. "Because if the organizations can't help her and we can help her, shouldn't we?" James felt something uncomfortable twisting in his chest. Shame, perhaps. Or the recognition that his 5-year-old daughter possessed a compassion he'd somehow lost in his climb to the top. "All right," he said finally. "We can give her your leftovers. But I'll do it. You stay here." "No," Sophie said with surprising firmness. "I want to give it to her. You said it's important to see people, not just their problems, to look them in the eyes and treat them like people. You said that when we gave money to the man playing violin at Christmas." James had indeed said that during a rare moment of parental wisdom. He'd been teaching Sophie about treating service workers and street performers with respect and dignity. He hadn't expected her to apply the lesson quite so literally or at quite so inconvenient a moment. "Fine," James relented. "But I'm coming with you." He signaled the waiter for a takeout container, then helped Sophie carefully transfer her uneaten pasta into it. Sophie also insisted on including the untouched bread basket and the fruit plate. James had ordered more out of habit than hunger. Together, they approached the young woman on the sidewalk. Up close, James could see she was younger than he'd initially thought. Probably early 20s, with green eyes that held a wariness born of hard experience. She watched their approach with the careful tension of someone who'd learned that attention from wealthy strangers could go either direction. "Excuse me," Sophie said politely, in the careful voice she used with adults she didn't know. "My name is Sophie. We were having lunch over there and I didn't finish all my food. Would you like it? There's pasta and bread and fruit." The young woman stared at Sophie, then at James, clearly trying to assess whether this was genuine or some sort of elaborate cruelty. James had heard stories of people who mocked the homeless, filmed them for social media, turned their suffering into entertainment. "It's not a trick," James said quietly. "My daughter noticed you and wanted to share. If you'd like the food, it's yours. If not, no judgment." The woman's eyes filled with tears. "Thank you," she whispered, accepting the containers from Sophie with shaking hands. "Thank you so much. I haven't eaten since yesterday morning. What's your name?" Sophie asked with the fearless friendliness of childhood. "Emma," the woman said. "My name is Emma. It's nice to meet you, Emma," Sophie said solemnly. "I'm sorry you're hungry. That must feel really bad." "It does," Emma admitted. "But this helps. This helps so much. You're very kind. Can I ask you something?" Sophie said, and James tensed, uncertain what innocent but potentially hurtful question his daughter might ask. "Why are you sitting outside? Don't you have a house?" "Sophie," James started, but Emma held up a hand. "It's okay," she said. "It's a fair question." "No, sweetheart, I don't have a house right now. I did once, but I lost it. Sometimes that happens to people." "Why?" Sophie asked, genuinely curious rather than judgmental. Emma looked at James as if seeking permission to share difficult truths with a child. James nodded slightly. Sophie was asking, and she deserved honest answers, even if they were uncomfortable. "I got sick," Emma explained simply. "I had a job and an apartment, and then I got really sick. I spent a long time in the hospital, and when I got out, I'd lost my job because I'd been gone so long. Without a job, I couldn't pay my rent. Without rent, I lost my apartment. And once you're homeless, it's really, really hard to get back on your feet. You need an address to get a job, but you need a job to get an address. It becomes this circle you can't escape." James felt the explanation land in his chest like a physical blow. He'd always vaguely assumed that homelessness resulted from bad choices, moral failings, addiction, or laziness. The idea that someone could simply get sick, could experience bad luck, and have the entire structure of their life collapse was deeply unsettling. "That's not fair," Sophie said, her small face creasing with distress. "You didn't do anything wrong. You just got sick. My friend Maya got sick last year and she didn't lose her house. Maya's family probably had resources I didn't have," Emma said gently. "Money saved up, family who could help, good insurance. I didn't have those things, so when bad luck happened, I had no safety net." "Daddy has lots of resources," Sophie observed. "Maybe he can help you get a house." James felt every eye at the nearby cafe tables turned toward them. His discomfort ratcheted up several notches. This was exactly the kind of scene he'd wanted to avoid, a public conversation about homelessness and resources and helping, with his daughter putting him on the spot in front of New York's elite. "Sophie, it's not that simple," he started. "Why not?" Sophie interrupted. "You're always saying you want to make a difference. You give money to help people all the time. Emma is a person who needs help. She's right here." "Why can't you help her?" James looked down at his daughter, then at Emma, who was watching this exchange with a mixture of hope and resignation, as if she'd learned not to expect much from wealthy people's promises but couldn't quite stop hoping anyway. He thought about the acquisition proposal he'd been reviewing, a deal worth $50 million that would add another zero to his net. Worth but do nothing to actually improve anyone's life. He thought about the fundraising gala next month, where he'd pledged to donate $200,000 to homelessness. Prevention programs, a donation he could well afford, but which felt suddenly hollow, compared to the woman sitting in front of him, who needed help now, not after the charity processed his check and debated how to allocate funds. "You're right," James heard himself say, surprising himself as much as Emma. Sophie, you're absolutely right. Emma, are you willing to accept help if I offer it? Emma's eyes went wide. What kind of help? The kind that gives you a chance to get back on your feet, James said, his CEO brain already formulating a plan. But I need to know your situation first. You said you were sick. Are you recovered? Do you need ongoing medical care? I'm recovered, Emma said quickly. It was appendicitis that got infected. I spent 2 weeks in the hospital and another month recovering. I'm healthy now. I'm just stuck. Do you have any family? Friends who could help? Emma shook her head. I aged out of foster care at 18, no family. I had friends, but when you become homeless, people tend to drift away. It's uncomfortable for them, you know? They don't know how to help, so eventually they just stop trying. What about your job skills? What did you do before you got sick? I was an administrative assistant at a law firm, Emma said. I'm good with computers, scheduling, organization, customer service. I was actually studying for my paralegal certification at night school when I got sick. I had to drop out when I lost my job because I couldn't afford the tuition. James made a decision. Here's what I'm offering. I own a company called Hartwell Industries. We have an employee housing program, small apartments we keep available for staff who are relocating or in temporary need. One of those apartments is currently vacant. You can stay there rent-free for 3 months while you get back on your feet. Emma's hands flew to her mouth. Are you serious? I'm serious. In exchange, I'd like you to work for the company. We need an administrative assistant in our community outreach department. The pay is $45,000 a year with full benefits, including health insurance. It's entry-level, but it's stable and there's room for advancement. I can't. Why would you do this? Emma stammered. James looked at his daughter, who was beaming with pride and joy. Because my daughter reminded me that seeing a need and having the power to help creates an obligation to actually help. Not just talk about helping or donate to organizations helping. You're here, you need help, and I can provide it. It's really that simple. But you don't know me, Emma protested. I could be lying. I could have a criminal record. I could be unstable or dangerous or... Do you have a criminal record? James asked. No. Are you unstable or dangerous? No, I need help, that's all. I'm just someone who had bad luck and need a chance to get back up. Then that's all I need to know, James said. Well, that and your full legal name for the employment paperwork. Emma what? Emma Rose Thompson, she whispered. This is real? This is actually happening? It's actually happening, James confirmed. He pulled out his phone. I'm going to call my HR director right now. Her name is Patricia, and she's excellent at cutting through bureaucratic nonsense. We'll get you set up in the apartment today, get you some immediate necessities, and start the employment paperwork on Monday. 20 minutes later, Patricia had arranged for Emma to be picked up and taken to the company apartment. James had provided her with cash for immediate needs, toiletries, food, basic clothing. Sophie had given Emma her favorite stuffed rabbit, insisting that Emma needed it more. I'll take care of him, Emma promised, clutching the worn bunny that Sophie had carried everywhere since she was 2. I'll bring him back to you when I'm doing better. You can keep him, Sophie said generously. He's good at making people feel safe. You need that more than I do right now. After Emma left in the car Patricia had sent, Sophie and James sat back down at their table. James canceled the rest of his afternoon work, putting his phone away completely for the first time in years. Daddy, Sophie said after a long silence. Yes, sweetheart. I'm proud of you. You helped Emma, you saw her, and you helped her. James felt tears prick his eyes, tears he'd been too busy, too focused, too driven to allow himself for years. I'm proud of you too, Sophie. You saw someone who needed help and you didn't look away. You didn't make excuses. You just wanted to help. That's better than anything I do at work. Building companies and making money is fine. But what you did today, seeing someone's humanity and responding with kindness, that's what actually matters. Will Emma be okay now? Sophie asked. I think so, James said. I hope so. She's smart and capable. She just needed a chance. But Sophie, I want you to understand something. What we did today for Emma, that's not something that solves homelessness completely. There are thousands of people like Emma in this city, all with their own stories, all needing help. One person helping one other person is good, but it's not enough. So what do we do? Sophie asked. We do both, James decided. We help individuals when we can, like we helped Emma today. But we also work on bigger solutions, supporting policies and programs that create safety nets, so people don't fall through the cracks the way Emma did. We use our resources not just for individual charity, but for systemic change. That sounds hard, Sophie observed. It is hard, James agreed. But so is building a business, and I did that. So is raising a daughter alone, and I'm doing that, though not as well as I should be. Hard doesn't mean impossible. It just means it takes work and commitment, and caring more about the outcome than about being comfortable. Over the following weeks, Emma thrived in her new role at Hartwell Industries. She was everything she'd claimed to be: smart, organized, reliable, and grateful without being obsequious. She threw herself into her work, determined to prove that James's faith in her hadn't been misplaced. Patricia, the HR director, became Emma's mentor, helping her navigate corporate culture and professional development. Other employees, learning about Emma's situation and how she'd been hired, began sharing their own stories of struggle and recovery, creating a culture of openness that hadn't existed before. James began implementing broader changes. He established a formal partnership with a homeless services organization, creating a program that hired individuals experiencing homelessness for entry-level positions, while providing housing support. He revised company policies to include more generous medical leave and emergency assistance funds, recognizing that a single crisis shouldn't destroy someone's entire life. He also started bringing Sophie to volunteer at a food bank on weekends, wanting to ensure that her impulse to help was nurtured and developed rather than being a single moment of childhood, compassion that faded as she grew older. 3 months after that lunch on Fifth Avenue, Emma came to James's office. She looked transformed, healthy, confident, professionally dressed, no longer bearing any visible signs of the trauma she'd endured. "I wanted to update you on my situation," Emma said. "I've saved enough for a deposit on my own apartment now. Not one of the company units, my own place. I'm moving out this weekend." "That's wonderful," James said sincerely. "I'm so happy for you." "I also wanted to return this," Emma said, pulling Sophie's stuffed rabbit from her bag. "It's been my comfort through all of this. But I think Sophie might want him back now." "Keep it," James said. "Sophie gave it to you. She'd want you to have it as a reminder that you're not alone, that people care about you." Emma's eyes filled with tears. "Can I ask you something? Why did you really do this? I know Sophie asked you to help, but you could have just given me money and walked away. You gave me a job, housing, a chance at a real life. Nobody does that. So why did you?" James thought about how to answer honestly. "Because I'd become someone I didn't want to be. I'd spent years building wealth and success, while forgetting why any of it mattered. My daughter reminded me in the most direct, uncomfortable way possible that resources create responsibilities, that seeing suffering and having the power to alleviate it creates an obligation to actually do something, not just feel bad or make token gestures." He paused. "But also because your story scared me. You did everything right. You worked hard, you had a job. You were trying to build a better life through education. And one medical crisis destroyed everything. If it could happen to you, it could happen to anyone. That shouldn't be how our society works. People shouldn't be one illness or one paycheck away from losing everything. So you helped me to feel better about yourself?" Emma asked, but there was no accusation in her tone, just honest curiosity. "Partly," James admitted, "but also because it was the right thing to do. And because I genuinely wanted to see you succeed. Both things can be true. I can benefit from helping you while still caring about you as a person." Emma smiled. "Well, thank you for all of it. You changed my life, Mr. Hartwell. You and Sophie. I'll never forget that." 5 years later, Emma was the director of community outreach at Hartwell Industries, overseeing the homeless hiring program that had grown from a single experiment to a model being adopted by companies across the country. She'd completed her paralegal certification and was now taking night classes toward a social work degree. She'd also never forgotten that lunch on Fifth Avenue when a 5-year-old girl had seen her hunger and asked to share, when a billionaire CEO had been challenged by his daughter to be better and had actually risen to the challenge. Sophie, now 10, still volunteered regularly, though her understanding of social issues had grown more sophisticated. She no longer believed that in